2,000 years ago, Jesus walked the dusty, rutted roads of Judea. The religious world around him operated by a clear, unchallenged set of rules. Sin was a public list of broken commandments. Judgment was reserved for the obvious wrongdoers, the outcasts, the people who broke the rules everyone agreed on. Religious leaders competed for public piety, casting stones at anyone who fell short, while hiding their own failures behind polished public performances. Grace was something you earned through good works and perfect compliance. Everyone accepted this order. No one questioned it. Then Jesus spoke. His approach to sin shattered every single one of those unchallenged assumptions. He refused to play by the old rules. He called out the hidden rot the religious leaders ignored. He welcomed the people everyone else cast out. He balanced unflinching truth with radical mercy in a way no one had ever seen before. 2,000 years later, that same balanced perspective still upends our assumptions. It still challenges every easy answer we reach for when we talk about guilt, judgment, and grace. It still forces us to dig deeper and confront what sin really is and what God really offers. Jesus never softens the sharp truth about what sin is. He never flinches from calling it by its real name. He identifies it as a deadly rift, one that cuts the entire connection between humanity and God. He never brushes wrong choices aside. He never tells people their actions don't carry weight, that what they do doesn't matter. This is where he agrees with the religious leaders of his day. Sin is real, and it is dangerous. But here is where he breaks completely from their way of thinking. He never responds with only harsh condemnation, the way those leaders do every single day. He doesn't stop at the surface of what people do. He digs deeper, straight past outward behavior, into the hidden space of the human heart. He teaches something that no one in the religious establishment has ever said before. Sin is not just a list of broken rules. It is not just bad actions that other people can see. It starts first, before any action is ever taken, in the hidden condition of a person's heart. Every wrong act grows from a seed that was planted and nurtured deep inside, long before it ever breaks through into the open world. This one truth completely shifts the entire conversation about right and wrong. It moves the focus from checking the boxes of public religious rules to honestly examining what lives inside each of us. For Jesus, true goodness is not just how you act when other people are watching. It starts with a change that begins deep in the hidden places of your heart. Jesus makes this core point over and over in every public teaching he delivers. No setting drives this truth home more clearly than the Sermon on the Mount. Thousands of people have gathered on the grassy hillside, pressing in close to hear every word he speaks. They have come expecting to hear him affirm the rules they have always lived by. They expect him to confirm what their religious leaders have taught them their whole lives. Sin is what you do with your body, in public, for everyone to see. But Jesus does the opposite. He reaches into their most common inner struggles and redefines sin entirely for every person listening. He says uncontrolled anger that you hold in your heart toward another person carries the same moral weight as murder. The crowd stirs. Murder is the worst sin they can imagine. How can a quiet, hidden anger measure up? Jesus does not stop there. He adds that looking at another person with lust in your heart is the same as committing adultery in open action. Another stir runs through the crowd. Adultery is a sin they stone people for. But Jesus says the desire that lives in your hidden heart is just as much sin. This teaching makes one thing impossible to ignore. Sin is not limited to what we do with our bodies. It is not confined to the acts we commit that other people can see. It includes every thought, every attitude, every hidden desire that we hold in the private places of our hearts. Before any act is ever done, the sin is already there, growing in the dark. From this new foundation of hidden heart sin, Jesus calls out one of the most dangerous forms of sin any person can commit. He names it directly: hypocrisy. He does not mince words, and he does not hold back from confronting the most powerful people in the religious world. He openly criticizes the leading religious teachers of his day, the men who set the spiritual standard for every person in Judea. These men have built their entire public identity on perfect obedience to God's rules. They put on a flawless show of piety for every crowd that watches them. They walk through the marketplaces with long faces. They give large donations to the temple right at the gate where everyone can see them give. They stand on street corners and pray loud, elaborate prayers so passers-by will stop and notice how holy they are. Every act is calculated. Every gesture is performed for an audience of other people, not for God. But behind the polished, pious masks they wear for the public, their hearts are rotting from the inside out. They are full of greed, hungry for the money and power that come from their positions. They are swollen with pride, convinced they are better than every other person who walks past them. Their corruption runs deeper than any of the outward sins they condemn in other people. Jesus makes this clear without apology. He cares far more about authenticity and sincerity in a person's relationship with God than any outward religious performance. The act means nothing if the heart behind it is broken and corrupted. Even with this uncompromising stance against every form of sin, Jesus reveals a radical truth that turns the entire religious world's hierarchy upside down. He does not separate people into two clean categories: the righteous who deserve God's favor and the sinful who deserve only condemnation. He does not stand with the religious leaders who look down on the outcasts, claiming their own good deeds make them worthy of God's attention. Instead, he makes one equalizing truth clear from the start. Every single person is a sinner. Every single person needs God's forgiveness. He never puts one group of people above another. He never says the outwardly sinful traitors and outcasts are worse than the religiously respectable who sit in the temple seats. He shows that every person, no matter how many good deeds they have done, no matter how perfectly they follow the religious rules in public, falls short of God's perfect standard. No one can stand before God and claim their own goodness earns them a place in His presence. The religious leader who condemns the tax collector for stealing is just as guilty of greed and pride in his own heart. The pious teacher who shuns the woman for her moral failings carries his own hidden sin that separates him from God. This levels the playing field for every person who walks the earth of Judea. It strips away every claim to moral superiority. It calls every one of us, regardless of our position in the religious world, to humble honesty before God. No one is exempt. No one is clean enough on their own. Everyone needs the mercy God offers. The religious leaders do not accept this truth. It attacks their power, it undermines their authority, and they move to trap Jesus into contradicting himself. They find a woman caught in the act of adultery, drag her through the crowded streets by her arms, and yank her to stand before Jesus where the whole crowd can watch. They turn to the crowd, loud and self-righteous, and state their demand. The law of Moses commands that this woman be stoned to death for her sin. What does Jesus say? They watch him closely, waiting for him to slip. If he says to let her go, they can accuse him of breaking God's law. If he says to kill her, they can accuse him of betraying the radical mercy he preaches. Either way, they win. Jesus does not answer. He bends down, lowers his hand to the warm dust at his feet, and begins to write in the dirt with his finger. The sun beats down on the crowd. The accusers shift their weight, stones heavy in their hands, and keep pressing him for an answer. Finally, Jesus stands straight, looks across the crowd at the men who demand the woman's death, and speaks the challenge that cuts through every pretense. Let any one of you who has never committed sin throw the first stone. Jesus does not leave this truth hanging. He tells a simple, plain story that sticks in the mind of every listener to show what God's mercy looks like when a sinner turns back. It's the story of two sons who live with their father on a small farm in the hills of Judea. The younger son goes to his father, demands his share of the family inheritance early, and takes every coin the father gives him. He leaves home, travels far to a foreign country, and wastes every bit of it on reckless, self-indulgent, sinful living. He spends until his pockets are empty, until there is nothing left but the dust of the road and an empty belly. A brutal famine hits the land, and he finds himself hungry enough to take work feeding pigs on a local farm. He sits in the mud with the pigs, so starved he craves the pods the pigs eat. and no one gives him anything to eat. He hits rock bottom, alone and desperate, and finally comes to his senses. He remembers his father's house, where even the hired servants have more bread than they can eat. He decides to go home. He does not plan to ask to be a son again. He plans to beg his father to take him back as one of his hired workers. He walks for days, blisters rising on his feet, his clothes tattering in the wind, and finally climbs the last hill toward his father's land. His father has been watching the road every single day, waiting. He sees his son far off, while he is still a speck on the horizon. He runs down the hill toward him, does not wait for the son to finish his apology, throws his arms around him, and kisses him. He calls his servants to bring the best robe, put a ring on his hand, and kill the fattened calf. He throws a huge feast for the whole village, and tells everyone to celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, and he is alive again. He was lost, and now he is found. This story wraps two unshakable truths into one simple scene. First, it confirms what Jesus has said all along. Sin pulls people away from the God who made them. It separates child from father and leaves the sinner empty, alone, and starving for something to fill the hole that sin creates. But second, it reveals what no religious teacher in Judea has ever dared to say. God does not wait for sinners to make themselves perfect before he welcomes them home. He watches the road. He runs to meet the one who turns back. He celebrates, even before the apology is finished. Jesus repeats this core mission to every crowd that gathers, over and over, until every listener has heard it clearly. God does not desire to condemn sinners. He desires to save them. Jesus says it plainly. He didn't come into the world to judge and condemn the lost. He came to seek them out, to find them where they are, and pull them back home. Jesus doesn't shy away from the hard truth about sin's grip on humanity. He teaches that anyone who keeps living in sin becomes a slave to it. Sin traps them, holds them captive, and locks them out of the freedom God intends for them. No amount of rule-keeping, no amount of good works, no amount of religious effort can break that trap on its own. People can't free themselves. They need a savior. 2,000 years ago, this message upended every expectation of the religious world around him. Even today, it cuts through every extreme that humans lean toward and calls us back to a perfect, unshakable balance. Jesus never compromises God's perfect holiness, which cannot tolerate sin in any form. He never softens the truth about what sin does. It starts in the heart. It traps people in slavery. It separates us from God. It damages every relationship it touches and leaves a trail of brokenness in its wake. He never excuses sin, never writes it off as no big deal, and never gives a free pass to keep living in wrongdoing. Every time he extends forgiveness, he ends with the same clear command: go and sin no more. Forgiveness is not a license to stay in brokenness. It is a fresh start, a call to walk in a new way. But at the same time, Jesus never closes the door on any sinner who turns back to God. He does not demand that people fix themselves first before they can come to him. He meets them where they are. He extends unmerited, unearned grace freely to anyone who repents, anyone who turns away from their sin and turns back to God. He levels every dividing line between people. He does not put the religiously respectable above the outcast, or the outward sinner above the pious leader. Every single person falls short of God's perfect standard. Every single person needs forgiveness. Every single person is invited to come. In the end, Jesus' view of sin holds truth and grace in perfect, unbroken tension. He holds to the uncompromising truth of God's holiness, and he extends free, full forgiveness to every soul who turns to him. He does not leave us trapped in our sin. He offers complete transformation of the heart, full forgiveness for every wrong, and a restored relationship with the God who made us. His invitation stands open today, just as it stood open on the roads of Judea 2,000 years ago. Turn from your sin and receive the restoring, redeeming love of God that he freely offers to all who come.